Baruch Hashem.
Oh, Hashem, good to hear. Good to hear. All right. So the abridged code of Jewish law, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 103. We're going to start today. Dinei Simchas Yontov, the laws of rejoicing on Yontov. So here we go. You are legally obligated to be happy. So anyone who's not happy has to start working on that. Right. On Yontov, legally obligated to be happy. We have not just happy. Simcha is an all-encompassing joy from within. So that's what we need to do. So Aleph, number one, let's see, how do we make ourselves happy? Just as there is a mitzvah to honor Shabbos and to have pleasure to enjoy it, Kach, likewise, there is a mitzvah to honor all the Yom Tovim, all the festivals, and have enjoyment. Shenamar, how do we know this? Because it says in the verse, it says it's Hashem's holy and honored days referring to the Chol Yom Tovim, and every Yom Tov, Nema HaMikra Kodesh. The Torah calls them Kodesh, calls them holy, something special. So on these days, we need to really be happy. Just by the way, we discussed this. We're almost getting back to Adar again, right? Last year we discussed this, but it's almost a year round, and we're speaking about that. When Adar comes, we increase in simcha, we increase in happiness. So last year we pointed out it doesn't mean we suddenly become happy. We increase. So we're meant to have simcha, we're meant to be happy, full of joy, the entire year. Just rejoicing, being a Jew, what a privilege. And on Adar, we get even more so. So similarly on the Yontovs, we add. So base number 2, Ezehu Kibud. What is the honor? We say we're meant to honor Yontov. So practically speaking, what is meant by honoring Yontov? This is what our sages tell us the following. As a mitzvah person, he should get a haircut erev Yontov. So the first thing to honor Yontov is you got to look presentable. So you get a haircut, nice trim. Now, practically speaking, just by the way, just as I don't think we're going to discuss it here, but when we were talking about Shabbos, sometimes, ideally, you should do everything on Friday. You should shop on Friday, you should cook on Friday, you should clean on Friday, get haircuts on Friday, wash on Friday, do everything on Friday, because that shows you're doing it for the sake of Shabbos. Practically speaking, though, particularly if it's winter, there's not enough hours in the day to do everything on Friday. So some things have to be brought forward. But the later that we do it, the more that it shows. So likewise also, running out to get a haircut erev Yontov may not be practical. Particularly, if you got people coming and you need to cook and it's Pesach. It's not just now, you're finishing, making your kitchen look like a spaceship with all the tinfoil and all the various things that we're going to do. But before Yontov and close enough to Yontov that it's recognizable that you're doing it for the sake of Yontov, we get the haircut. We shouldn't go into the Yontov looking, untidied and disheveled. We should look smart and pretty. Likewise, there's a mitzvah on erev Yontov, on the day for Yontov, to wash in hot water, right? To have a shower, our whole body, to shampoo our hair, cut our nails, erev Yontov. Erev Shabbos, just like we try and do all these things before Shabbos. Likewise, it's a mitzvah to make challahs in your house on erev Yontov, just like you do on erev Shabbos. Right, so again, if it's practical, there are many people who buy bread for the week, but when it comes to Yontov, comes to Shabbos, they bake their own challah, because this shows an extra special love and connection to Shabbos. Make your own. So, and you get to the mitzvah of taking challah and various things can bring a lot of blessings to the house. So if it's practical, it's something we try and do. It's not always practical. It depends on how many people are in your house and where you live and different things. But if you're able to, or if you can't do it every Shabbos, maybe on Yom Tov. Obviously, we're not baking challah on Pesach. Right, for Pesach. Now we're having the matzahs instead. But if we can for Yom Tov, v'chein, and likewise, just like on Shabbos, we know this for Shabbos, the same thing. We don't have a proper meal in the late afternoon on Erev Yom Tov, because we don't want to kadesh yachas this Yom Tov the Taivan. We want to be able to eat a Yom Tov meal with an appetite. Now, again, also we have to be practical about this, because sometimes you do need to eat a meal. For example, the next Yom Tov coming up, actual Yom Tov, is Pesach. Now, if you're planning to have a nice Seder and to be able to go through at a leisurely pace, it doesn't mean you have to drag it out, but at a leisurely pace and to discuss things and explain things and make it a meaningful experience, then the meal is not going to be 10 minutes after you get home from shul. It's going to be an hour or so, or even more later. So sometimes, in order to have the Yom Tov meal properly, you do eat before Yom Tov, and that was especially for the kids, so that way they can, they can function. But a regular Yom Tov, let's say it's Sukkos, and pretty much soon the shul's finished, you're going to come and make kiddush and start the meal. So if you eat half an hour before you go to shul, a great big meal, you're not going to be hungry, you're not going to be in the mood to eat. The imchal erev Yom Tov b'Shabbos. Now, if Shabbos is Saturday night, Sunday. Sorry, Shabbos is never Saturday night, Sunday. Yom Tov is Saturday night, Sunday. So it's immediately after Shabbos. Now, on Shabbos, we know that we have 3 Shabbos meals. And on Shabbos, we do eat a meal in the afternoon. So now we have a conflict. So we understand when Yom Tov follows a weekday, we don't have a big meal in the afternoon, right? But now we have a conflict of interest over here. We have, on the one hand, we have to have a 3rd Shabbos meal, and that means we should wash and at least have fish and something. And on the other hand, we don't want to eat too much and spoil our Yom Tov meal that's going to be Saturday night. So what do? We should eat our 3rd Shabbos meal early. So before like a third, well, before the last third of the evening, the afternoon. So we have a little bit earlier. So normally on a Shabbos, generally what happens is we go to Mincha, the afternoon service, and then we wash and we have our 3rd Shabbos meal, and we pretty much go until the end of Shabbos, and then we bench and we have Maariv and we finish Shabbos. So if it's going to be Yom Tov afterwards, so we'll have it earlier before we go to shul, and that way we can have time. We can still have the 3rd Shabbos meal properly, and still have time to get our appetite back. The same thing applies if we've got first day Yom Tov, and that evening is going to be 2nd day Yom Tov. If you have this massive Yom Tov lunch, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to, if you have a late lunch, this massive lunch, just a light lunch, 16 courses, nothing to it. But sometimes, that was just appetizers. You wait till we get to the main dish. That's I have to say, though, I have to confess, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I ate before Yom Tov and wasn't able to eat my Yom Tov meal later. But maybe I should be. Maybe that's a problem with me. Isaac, is your hand up? Or are you just resting your hand? Yeah, of course. Oh, okay. I thought you're asking. All right. So Gimel, number 3. Aizer Einig. So we discussed honoring. We honor it by getting a haircut. We cut our nails. We wash. We the same way. It didn't mention it, but we have nice yontif clothes. And actually our yontif clothes should be even nicer than Shabbos clothes. That's why generally when we buy new Shabbos clothes, we normally get it for a yontif. So that's honoring. The same way if an honorable person came and someone you want to show that you respect and different things, so you're tied to the house, all these different things. But how do we have oinig? How do we enjoy it? Okay. This is what our sages tell us the following. Each day of Yontif, we have to have 2 meals. Achas b'layla, achas b'yom. One at night, one during the day. Avul suda shlishis, but the third meal that we normally have on Shabbos, ain't the hagim boy, we don't have. V'chayev l'kadesh al yayin koydem suda, and we have to make kiddush of wine before the meal. The yivtza al shteki korish shleimus k'bu Shabbos, and we make hamotzi over 2 whole loaves, 2 whole challahs, like we do on Shabbos. The yarbe b'bosav yayin migdonos k'yichaltoi, and we should be lavish with meat, wine, sweets, treats, as much as your means provide. Right, so you don't need to take a mortgage out for Yontif. But it should be nicer in a regular meal. If someone, it shouldn't just be an excuse to eat whatever. It should really be in honor of Yontif. But if someone has, it could be how one would eat on Yontif. If someone would eat like that in a regular day, they'd be a glutton. But Yontif is different. It's honest. It's think about the wedding. The wedding, they only give you half portions anyway, the caterers. But in concept, if you actually got a normal, right, you'd eat and celebrate. You're so happy you're celebrating. So that's it'll be the same kind of thing. Very special occasion. Okay, there's no questions today. It's going to be worried. No. Dalid. B'chal Yontif. Every Yontif. B'kiddush b'layla, at the nighttime kiddush. Oimim l'acharav birchas shechiyanu asimchas chag. We make the bracha of shechiyanu right after the kiddush, over the joy of the holiday, and that's what shechiyanu is. We thank Hashem keeping us alive to this time. It's something special. That's the bracha on the joy. Chutz, the only exception is Balal Shvi Shal Pesach, Balal Shemini. The last 2 nights of Pesach. Why not? We don't say Shechianu on the last nights of Pesach, because it's not a new festival. It's just a continuation of the previous festival. On Sukkot, the last nights, they're like a new Yontif. So, it's a new Shechianu. But the last day is Pesach after Chol HaMoed. It's continuation of Pesach, so there's no new Shechianu. But other than that, every other Yontif, right after Kiddush, the men at least say Shechianu. The Hanoshim and the women. B'shas hadlakas neiros, when they light the candles, so we're going to first see, we're going to bring 2 customs. So they don't say Shechianu Yontif. That's 1 custom. And some, seemingly only a few, but today I would say it's definitely the majority of people say Shechianu after light candles. Maybe in Hungary, when the Sefer was originally written 200 years ago, maybe in Hungary at the time the custom was only some people said Shechianu, but I think generally everywhere else it was the norm for the women say Shechianu on the candles. It says we don't protest when they do that. And not only will I tell you not to protest, I highly recommend it. So if you have a set custom, let's say that your mother and your grandmother and they didn't say Shechianu on Yontif, I'm not sure that you should change in your family custom. But if you don't have family custom, you don't know what it is, then I strongly urge that when you make the brach and candles on Yontav, you also say the Shechianu on the Yontav. Some people, because of this, since on Yontav you can light from an existing flame, what some people do is they actually delay lighting candles until the husband comes home from shul, or they also come home from shul, right? No, it's right before Kiddush. And that way they light, say Shechianu. As soon as they've said Shechianu, the husband says Kiddush in his Shechianu, and that way the Shechianu goes together with the Kiddush and the candle lighting. So it's, anyway, it's not a requirement, it's just something to do. Now, number 5, hey, all the ladies are going to like this one. I think I'm going to get quoted to everyone. A person is obligated to make happy the hearts of his wife, children, always dependent on it. Each one the way that's good for them. Haktanim, what does he do for the kids? He brings them nuts and candy. You know what? He gets a chocolate, a Yontav treat. Right? They get candies. But Nashim and his wife, the Godim, he has to get a new outfit for Yontav. Tachshitim and some jewelry. According to his means. So, right, tell your husbands to start saving up. That's Noshim. And how do the men enjoy Yontav? But boss of a yain, meat and wine. It's something good to eat and something good to drink. But the hagim lahasmin and macholim b'Yontav yosim Shabbos. And the custom is to have more food at the Yontav table than the Shabbos table. Now, it doesn't mean that that person has to force feed themselves and, you know, and be ridiculous, but it means more dishes. So you might have, let's say, a Friday night, you might have a fish with a salad. Let's say a soup. Then you have, let's say, chicken with a kugel and a dessert. So now on Yontav, you add something. Maybe you have 2 kugels, or you'll have an extra salad, or there'll be chicken and meat, and people can take a little bit of each, you know, whatever it is. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be more in quantity, but it should be more in variety and quality. It should just be a more fancy spread than Shabbos. Why? Give a Yontav nema boy, because about Yontav it says Simcha v'lo Shabbos, right? It says you have to have Simcha, you have to rejoice. And it doesn't say that about Shabbos. It only says about Yontav. The gambig da Yontav you korim yosem Shabbos. And likewise, people, their Yontav clothes should be more expensive than the Shabbos clothes. Okay. Vav, number 6. B'yom sheni shel Pesach. Now, on the second day of Pesach, of course, we have Purim coming up, which is also Yontav, not a Yontav we can't do Malach. The next one is Pesach. Here's something a lot of people didn't know. Yesh laseis besuda ezedava. You should add to the meal something extra on the second day of Pesach. Why? To remember the feast which Esther had on that day. Was on that day the Haman got hung. So that meal, you know, the Purim story when Esther invited the king and Haman was actually the second meal, second feast, and they had the feast, and it was at that feast that the king says, "What do you want?" He says, "Up to half the kingdom," and she says, "All I want is my life." And the king's outraged. Who wants to kill his queen? He says, "It's this man Haman." He gets hung that very day. That was second day Pesach. So that great miracle happened there. So nothing to do with Pesach in general, but just as remembrance of that miracle. So if we were adding one extra thing, now we should add 2 extra things. Should have something a little bit extra. Okay. Zion. Number 7. B'yayim Rishon Shel Shavuos. On the first day of Shavuos, Nahagin Lechol Mechali Cholov. We have a custom that we eat dairy foods. Right? It's very serious business. I start training eating cheesecake at least 2 weeks in advance to make sure that I can do a good job on Shavuos, and I highly recommend it. But yesh b'zeh kama tamim. There's many reasons for this custom. Many reasons for this custom of eating dairy on Shavuos. The remez, and there's a hint to this, hinted in the Torah, says mincha chadosha l'Hashem b'Shavuos seichem. That a mincha chadosha, a new new offering for Hashem should be b'Shavuos seichem, Rosh Teves, and if you take the first word of each letter, you make them initials, comes Macholov. Yeah, it becomes from dairy. So that's one of the reasons. We should also eat honey. Right? Shnamar says, right? Because Torah is compared to honey and milk. It says like honey with milk, that says Torah is going to be under your tongue, right? So sweet under your tongue. It's also, that's another reason. The kivan, and we have other reasons also. And God willing, when we get closer to Shavuos, we'll discuss it more in depth. But one thing we have to remember is since we're eating dairy foods, we also have to have meat on Yom Tov. It's a mitzvah to have a meat. So therefore, mitzvah lechol basar b'chol yontif, because there's a mitzvah to meet every yontif. So we have to be very careful that we don't get into problems, because of course we can't have milk and meat together, and we not only can we certainly have them together, we have to wait in between. Okay, there's different communities that have different times that they wait. Chabad wait 1 hour between the dairy and the meat, but the issue though is that you got to make sure it's not on the same tablecloth, and you wait the right amount of time in between, and you've rinsed out your mouth, and all the various things that we need to do. So that's the dairy. Okay, Ches number 8. Now, even though eating and drinking on the festivals is a positive commandment, it doesn't mean you eat and drink the whole day, right? It's a mitzvah to eat and drink on the day, but you're not meant to eat and drink the entire day. Zoe says, it's a day of restraint and honor of Hashem your God. And even though it says Aseres to Yelechem, it should be Aseres to you. Partial of a saying, our sages have already explained how you're meant to do it. Half the day you enjoy, so you have a nice food, maybe have a little nap, you relax, and half the day you're meant to give it to Hashem. We should be learning, we should be davening, we should that's how most people look at it, by the way. But many tzaddikim, after they were in shul and learning various things, they made a comment along the lines, I've had my half day. Now I have to go and have the Suda give Hashem his half a day. Right? And the ideal world, that should probably be how we look at the world. So we still have to remember, at the end of the day, yes, we have a mitzvah to have simcha, and to eat and to drink and to sing and be happy. But primarily the purpose of the day is to connect to Hashem, is to harness the ruchnius, the spirituality. So we have to make sure that we learn and we daven properly. So therefore we also have to make sure that we set aside part of the day to be Isaac, to actually be occupied and do something in Torah. Sure we learn something. Okay. Any questions? All right. Test number 9. Now that everyone found out to get new clothes and jewelry, we got more than want to hear what else is going to happen. So that's was excited. Now, when a person does eat and drink, we also have an obligation to provide for the orphan, the widow, and other needy people. So Yom Tov isn't just about, I'm going to make sure that I have the fanciest Yom Tov that I can. Yom Tov is also about, I want to try and help other people have a nice Yom Tov too. And obviously different people are in a different position to do that. I may have shared this story before, but there was it illustrates the point sometimes. There was this fellow, a rich man, businessman, and he was a good Jew. And one time he was traveling and came to a certain town, and they stayed there for Shabbos. It was in the way of the business trip. He hired a wagon driver, and anyway, you can't travel on Shabbos, obviously. So it's midway in the journey. They found the place to stay, and they go to the inn. And the innkeeper, the businessman, he washes up for Shabbos, and he's got his silk Shabbos kapot he's putting on. Meanwhile, the wagon driver, he stayed at a more simple inn. He was a man of very limited means, and he goes to shul early. And he decides, you know what? I'm going to invite a whole bunch of guests. Let me have guests for Shabbos. So he walks around to every poor person that he sees in shul and he invites them for Shabbos. The businessman, meanwhile, in his fancy clothes, he hears someone screaming for help. So he goes outside and he finds out there's someone, they're trying to get to town for Shabbos, but the wagon is caught in the mud. It's bogged in the mud. He can't get it out. So they need help. So, of course, another Jew needs help. He goes running, and he, he didn't know much about horses. Kind of long story short, it was only half stuck in the mud. He managed to get it completely stuck in the mud and rip up and dirty his Shabbos clothes as well. Meanwhile, the wagon driver brought all these poor people home and shared his black bread and herring and onion that he had, when all these people could have been invited by someone else. And other than that, they were pretty good guys, and they both went upstairs, when they passed away, and they're both judged to reach their potential. The problem is, on that day, each one of them did the other guy's mitzvah. The wagon driver, he was the one who was meant to go get those horses out. He had an expertise. He could have get them in 5 seconds. The rich man, he was the one who was meant to have the guests. Right? So, as much as we do need to help others, and we should help others, and sometimes that even costs a little bit of self-sacrifice. We do without certain things when necessary, but we have to make sure we're doing the right person's mitzvah. There's not the mitzvah for someone who barely has enough for his own children to bring home 10 guests. Unless they don't have anything else to eat either, the 10 guests. But normally they can get invited somewhere else, It's so. But anyway, as much as we can, as each person available, and usually each community has some type of fund or something, and people should try and help out. Anyway, we'll continue tomorrow, God willing. So everyone have a wonderful afternoon, and God willing, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.